Welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. Tonight, I have with me Parker Schmidt. Now, welcome to the podcast, man, or to the video cast, whatever we want to call this. Would you like to tell the guest who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Parker. I am a film director and photographer. I'm currently in Lisbon, Portugal right now. I come from the action sports scene. I used to be a professional downhill skateboarder for about 7 years. And then had in the past probably, let's say 2-3 years, taken more of a focus on doing film production and photography, and I have my own studio now and work with a great group out in Los Angeles, House of Spoils, that hosts just a couple of my photographs as well, and get to run around with a lot of really cool people. And my main focus is in like the outdoor and active and sports scene, and so my studio called Bonus Run, that's kind of where our emphasis lies, and we work with clients such as like Porsche and Mercedes, and most recently having done a surf film for Corona Beer. And yeah, it's been pretty fun.
That's awesome.
I've been basically homeless for the past year and a half, having just jumped from one project to the next, and so it's been really fun just keeping the candle burning in that way of just always having to think about the next thing coming up. And while I'm young, I can have the excuse for that. So yeah. When you get my age and you got a kid, it changes. It's nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
But the thing is I've so you get to see there's these really cool different niche markets in the film industry. You know, you have a lot of people think when they get into film, like everything's Hollywood, but you have tons of different areas that people get into, and now it's expanding even more. Like last night I had my friend Andrew on, and Andrew is a DOP, and we would work together on some big, cinematic films, and he's just a cool guy. And we were talking about how one of the areas that we were geeking out on was the FPV stuff, man. Like, it's just so cool, and we're not talking like the basic drone stuff, but like, the guy that I absolutely would love to meet someday, and I love his work, is Johnny FPV. It's like insane stuff, just like it's crazy. And the cool part is we're entering into this new time where we've got a bunch of creative tools that people can kind of harness. GoPro kind of revolutionized the action sports scene. And now people are, even some of the nicer cameras are getting, smaller form. Like last night, Andrew was saying, like he uses the red Komodo for a lot of the action shots now, because it is so damn small. What do you think about all that? Like, what do you feel about, the fun stuff that you're doing, man? I mean, you have to mention the cinematic mode on the new iPhone as well. Right?
Right? Yeah. I mean, like a lot of stuff, like it becomes a blurred mix of like the difference between being a content creator and a filmmaker, and that I'm kind of mixed up in that crowd as well, as far as the people I work with, who a lot of them have come from doing more content creation, where it's a bit more of like turn and burn production, and then like full on filmmaking, where if you have somebody who came from content creation going into like filmmaking and had to be like a one-man band, like independent filmmaker, like not even maybe touching narrative stuff, but what I'm familiar with, just a lot of outdoor people, like having to do their own thing and having to have really high demanding clients when what they're having to deliver, and then they go into doing either more narrative stuff or commercial pieces where it's like just 60 seconds you have to worry about, like just a 2-minute like short doc. It's something that I think they have a pretty great upper hand with, when they are able to go from having such a small camera to then going to like a larger like set or production, where they then can like focus on exactly what they're wanting to do. I think when the more people you get involved, the more fun it gets, because people are really fun, and you get then so many people that are so much better at what you do when you're having to be a one-man band. Because I kind of started from that too. I really quickly got into the team playing like group, which I was lucky for.
That's awesome.
Having like come from skateboarding and where there's like no teams or anything, like I was pretty against like having to do like school sports or anything like that because I didn't like having to rely on others. But when you have a whole bunch of people that are like in their own lane but providing something to a bigger cause, it's so incredible, and like how that can all come together. And so I mean, I think I didn't have like a particular answer about the gear in that stuff as well, because I'm not necessarily a gearhead. I love the cameras that I get to work with and stuff and love the results of them, but I've been stuck shooting analog for the past year and a half too, since that's all I've had hands on. Yeah, I have this is the main camera I've been working on. It's a Leica R3.
Nice.
And I have a medium format as well, but I just haven't had the chance to shoot digital as much. And then when I do, it's because of a production. And then I'm like either having to do another job or something else, but having to shoot analog, it's pretty fun to just not have then 2,000 pictures at the end of the day, but having like 3 rolls.
Yes. I'm big. My main camera is up over here. I shoot on Canon EOS 1N. Which is the old film camera for Canon EOS line. And I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And I'm a huge film fan. And I've got like 4 others up there too that are, I have this Olympus OM2 and a couple and then a Canon.
Yeah, the XA1, the little clamshells are like, those are like some of the best ones I've shot on too. They're so convenient. It's probably the one I use the most just because it's the most convenient.
Yeah. Yeah, I love them. And one of the things for me is like my dad was a photographer, and I grew up with film, and film forces me to take better shots because I have to think about my composition. I have to think about what I'm doing, and I don't know. I just take better pictures with film, and people might think I'm crazy, but I really, really, if I take 36 shots with a digital and then 36 shots with my film camera, I promise you that one's going to turn out better.
Yeah. So, I'm excited to this next year. I want to do some spots in like 16 or 35, just from like what I've heard and then what like some older guys have told me too, and just like have everybody like flips a switch when they are shooting production like on film, because it's not digital and you just can't play it back again, and it's something that like it's much more delicate.
We were talking. You got to watch the interview I shot last night. It's not up yet. The Andrew Rollins, when it goes out, because I asked Andrew that when I worked with him on we'd worked together on Angels and Demons, 12 plus years ago, and it was on film. And I remember watching them shoot on film, and I said, "What's it? How has it changed on big productions?" And he's like, "One of the things that's really weird is they just don't stop rolling now. They just keep those cameras, these big old cameras, rolling. They don't cut, and they're just like let it run." And he's like, and one of the things that he pointed out is that it's really tough for the camera team because they kind of lose their focus. They lose their, when you're getting ready for film and suddenly you're rolling, everyone is, focus puller's on his game. Everyone's on their A game. But, the second you just like keep rolling and these people like, hang on, are we going now? Like, and he's like, it's really tough. And it's a whole new kind of ball game. But he said that he feels like, at times people have lost something when they don't have that focus to really kind of, really pay special attention to what they're creating. Now, you shoot some really cool stuff, though. Tell me about the Center of the Sea. I looked at that. It was a really interesting project.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're in post-production for right now. So, and it's under embargo, so I'm not sure how much I can talk about. But I mean, just like the
Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a surf film that takes place in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, basically.
That's
and
awesome.
it was for Corona Beer, and it's coming out later this month or coming up next.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was my first surf film, and so I had a really fun time with the crew out there. And
what was it like? I mean, shooting a surf film, because I mean, I've always wanted to shoot a surf film. They look, I've been a huge fan from Endless Summer 2. I love the old ones and the newer ones, and the new stuff is great too.
I mean, I started surfing probably like last year or so as well. And coming from skateboarding, like there's the similar principles when you're actually riding, but then you're having this whole other element of Mother Nature involved where you have to understand how to read a wave and be in the right place at the right time to be able to actually catch it. And that being said, surf films were damn hard. had probably 4 or 5 sessions during the 5 days that we're there. We're usually, and most of my films were shooting either sunrise or sunset. And so we probably have like between like 5 to 10 clips that are like noteworthy enough to present. And so then it's actually thinking like, do they make sense in like just like the timeline with it? Are we gonna be able to use all of them? And so yeah, the surf is probably, from what I've heard from other like action sport filmmakers too, is like one of the hardest you can do. Like snow, yeah, it all still kind of stands still. You don't have to rely on good weather necessarily, but you can get there when the powder's already fallen. And skateboarding, you just have to know how to kind of ride a skateboard as a DP to be able to catch up with everybody. And motocross, same sort of thing too. But surfing, it seems to me to be one of the hardest types of like action sport mediums to capture.
Yeah. Now, were you guys shooting, when you shoot a surf film, are you, that's actually, I want to touch on that because I have always really respected all my skateboarding friends. One of my brother's friends was a professional skateboarder, and they were always going out and making videos all the time. And it was one of the things that was really interesting is that the skateboarders were always shooting other skateboarders, and there was always the one kid who's got the follow, the follow camera. And what I was always amazed by was the quality of the films that were getting put out by people who were not trained. You know what I mean? Like people that were just going out and doing it. And that to me, I was always really respected that. Now, what was it like, getting into skate? How do you shoot skateboarding films? What types of camera were you using? I mean, is it a GoPro? I mean, now what are people doing now?
Yeah, I mean, for downhill skateboarding, it's a bit different. You can honestly relate
that's true.
You can relate a bit closer to how a car commercial is shot or how you shoot backcountry skiing, because you're having to always work with a hill or a mountain. But there is the same way of capturing as traditional skateboarding is, where you have like your DSLR or your cinema camera on like a caddy or a gimbal while you're going down. It just depends on how brave you are. And the big element is that then you're going at like 45, 50 miles an hour and like 70, 80K, like having to then hold a camera going down there. And so like a lot of times, because we're a bunch of idiots, we would strap a camera to the front of a car on like a fisheye with a fisheye lens on it to make it look faster than it actually is. So it looks like you're on like 120K or whatever. And a car would chase you down the hill. And since it's a fisheye lens and you have to get really close to actually see detail of a skater, we wouldn't be any further than like 6 feet or like a meter away. And so you have this car that you can hear the engine revving behind you as you're going down probably an open road in like the French Alps or whatever, trying to like be cool and say stylish. You kind of have to just forget about it, like let the cloud in the back of your head just pop up a bit and keep focusing straight. I have some good friends from California that do an incredible job at that stuff and are most wild guys when it comes to doing that in like Laguna Beach like neighborhoods. And it's
crazy
wild.
Hills there.
It's wild, and it's like totally stupid the way we're doing it. Like there's hardly been any productions that have done it right. There's a few car commercials or just kind of like pieces that they kind of do like, oh, let's race down the hill together and whatnot, which it looks incredible. But most of the time you're having to do it like a cowboy and like either hold the camera, pull it from a car, or like you're shooting across the canyon to be able to get them going down the road too. But there's a few good shot like angles that people know how to get to make things look fastest or whatever. And so that's, I guess, is then kind of the etiquette of how we know how to make it look good, just because we know how to make ourselves look fast or stylish.
That's pretty actually awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like it's something that, people that are, I feel like if other film, I mean, sure, we don't necessarily always want to be, for other types of film, if people knew how to do some of these tricks, or not tricks, but techniques, it can make everyone a better filmmaker, because it's like each of these different arts have their own thing. I'm fascinated by, One of the things I'm absolutely fascinated by are these downhill races on mountain bikes. I know it's just mainly GoPro stuff, but like they have the one in Chile, the Valparaiso downhill, and like the guys are just racing down from the top of the city down to the bottom, and it's just it's awesome, man. But there's also some of these people that are doing ridges on mountain bikes, and then they just do these crazy downhills, and it's just always fascinating to me. Like
the Red Bull Rampage is probably one of the most heinous events that gets put on there. But like it's next up what those guys are doing, and then with all of them like strapped with like GoPros and stuff, you get the most just insane perspective on that sort of work.
Yeah. What type of work would you like to be doing? What type of action sport work, or just outside of action sports? What would you like to be doing, long term?
Yeah, I mean, going to features is kind of like one of the next like milestones of everything. I'm trying to go with like doing these sort of short docs, like the piece that we had done for Center of the Sea is kind of like a replay on these two girls' stories. So it's kind of a reconstructed nonfiction story, but you're still kind of having to do performance takes and stuff like that. So it's not true documentarian work, which I enjoy being able to construct like reality in my own way, like being able to kind of like take somebody's story or like a part of their life and like replay it almost when it comes to my documentary work. But being able to practice scripting and work like that as well, and being able to have more talking head work, having it be very like person focused, that's based on a true story, I guess is what I'm trying to get at then, is that doing work that is based on a true story, but that you're representing in your own way, I guess. I mean, there's plenty of ways too. The first one that comes to mind is like Wolf of Wall Street. Like it's based on a true story. It's like a portrait film about this certain time of this guy's life, but it's all based on like crazy facts and like what this guy had done with his life, and you kind of take that and put it into a lot of different ways and just how you want to frame it and how you want to appreciate for that. So yeah, that'd be kind of the way I want to go with it. For right now, I'm just wanting to continue to practice the craft and figure out just all the different technicalities with it, like all the different ways of concepting these ideas, like really figuring out like scripting, everything like that as well. But for right now, it's been great to run around with these people that are really passionate about the subjects we're capturing. The clients we have on board too are ones that like truly believe in the ideas we're going to bring to life, and they're just like, toss the product in there somewhere, like we trust you. And so it's like,
that's awesome.
It's been really convenient that way, thankfully.
Yeah. There was one of my favorite videos like that was Casey Neistat's. It was a commercial he did for Samsung, and essentially the entire video, they're just getting dragged around this resort on like this massive drone that they built, this absolutely huge drone, and it's like pulling them around on their snowboard, and then at the very end there's like this tagline, Samsung, it's like, oh man, you didn't even know it was an advertisement. I was like, damn, that was awesome.
I think that's something that's very new age of like very woke brands to say. Where they understand that millennials and Gen Z don't fall for like a product being shown and then being stuffed down their throat. They need it to be like affiliated with a person or with an action that they believe in. Because they see, like, we see through that stuff so quickly, and so you have to be a bit clever in how you want to deliver like your new campaign or new product as well. Because like the traditional stuff that even just say like 5 years ago, like it's not working as like much anymore now. Like doing stuff with like influencers or doing work that has to do with like a greater like action or activism, I think is something that a lot of brands are jumping onto, and the ones I've been able to work with like understand that and like definitely want to go in that way. But a lot of times they're still ran by some other folks that have to have some new age marketing teams to say like, hey, this is a good idea, like let's trust this, it's the way that the world's going. And like especially with like Casey, like it's one of those things that he definitely like understands that, and the people like in that whole realm to see the benefit of that as well.
Right. It's awesome. Now what are some of the films that inspired you? What are some of your go-to films that that you kind of model yourself after? Or just like?
Uncut Gems is probably one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, that's a good film, man.
I think just what I'm thinking about most recently, Uncut Gems. God, yeah, the Safdie brothers are so damn good at what they do.
Yeah.
I think like the way, like, it's just an anxiety trip the entire movie,
Yeah.
and it's just the beautiful abstract shots that they're able to bring in. I think it's outstanding. I think recently the TV show White Lotus, like, we've had so many just like it's fantastic. It's like we've had so many like wild shows. Like, I also love Succession, where it's just people in a room talking, but it is just like it twists your stomach again. And Succession has some insanely funny just like dialogue to it that doesn't have to like have that point to it. It's just super clever writing. And then there's also like Westworld, like
love Westworld.
Doing a Western is definitely up there for what I want to do.
Dude, I'm
Revenant,
100% with you. 100% with you.
Yeah, doing sort of
Revenant was awesome too.
Revenant as well. I'm reading a book my brother-in-law gave me about like a railroad builder in Idaho, which is where I'm from. Nice. I was raised in Idaho, and so it was like 1920s Idaho. Wow. It's just a really brutal book about how like there was just nothing out in the West, and like having the courage to ask an author if we could make a movie based on their book, I would love to do soon as well. And something that has to do with kind of like gritty old America sounds great. Like kind of even the mountaineers of like Colorado or something too sounds really, really sick to do. But that has to then take a bit more of the modern style to it, like how Revenant had done, how Westworld does as well. Like sci-fi is the more like gritty sci-fi, like dystopian stuff, like Total Recall. I think it's dope as well. And so there's a lot of stuff that gets me excited like that. And it's just awesome. Finding the time to be able to put those pieces together and get the right team together. But definitely planning on like setting up those sort of stuff soon as well.
Well, I think, what I really like about a lot of those too is reinventing the way we look at these like a Western, man, that's been done so many different ways, but yet, there's a new take on it. You can always spin it some way and just repackage it. Even, what was it? Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, the one that just came out. In the way he shot that with like all of the tilt focus lenses, so everything is like really, and people like, there was a really funny because I was like, I hadn't read about that before they shot it, but then I was like watching, I was like, man, this is some really crazy, this looks like it's a tilt focus lens or something. And all of a sudden I realized, and like people were like going on, there was like, I was looking at all these message boards and people were like, is something wrong with my TV? Why does it look like this? And what I was like, I respect him for simply, hey, let's try something different. Let's shoot it in a different way. And it was really cool to me. Yeah. But, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, then there's like Tenet where they obviously it was insanely constructed and accurate in how they had to make it happen, but they reversed their footage. And they won the Oscar for VFX or something. And there's a whole bunch of jokes about that too, how they just reversed their footage. But just like the small different like mechanisms that they use just to like either have people talking backwards or just the way that they're able to set their special effects to play correctly when they played it in reverse. And I don't know, just a lot, I guess, of that emotion of there was just one scene in particular where I remember it was one of the first opening shots when they're raiding the auditorium, and there's just this 10-second scene of this guy just running so hard down the straight line. And I just thought in my head, like, God, I just know Christopher Nolan just told this guy to like haul ass down the road, like down the hallway right now. And they just get like that. And like Black Panther has that sort of those action sequences too, where you can tell there's so much emotion behind it. And I think really getting in and being able to focus more on like an actual person's like emotional delivery when it comes to showing someone on frame is something that I really want to practice more and more, since like coming from action sport and outdoor stuff, you don't get to practice that so much. It's a lot more about the subject matter than it is about the person sometimes, especially when you're having to work on a tight budget or you're having to do this and that. You don't always get the chance to have like the right reaction to something, since you have some other things you're needing to try to capture. But like in some of my most recent pieces I've done, I got super lucky by getting like a perfect reaction that I couldn't have like articulated. Like there's a shot from a Leica film I did where we have a bunch of dirt bikers running past our star Nikki, and she just gives like the best laugh afterwards because it was the first take we did, and the dirt bikers
awesome.
came really close to her as she was shooting by them, and she kind of got pushed over and then was like laughing right back at camera, and that's one of the takes that we ended up using
Awesome.
for a final piece. And like, God, like I just want to be able to like have that same like emotion every single like shot that we're pushing through this. And so being able to have just more time for that, like when you get bigger budgets, you get like more like people on board, you get more like safety assurance, you get like the luxury of time as well. It's the most expensive thing that comes to filmmaking.
Right.
Sometimes is just the time that you get to take like for pre-production, for the actual shooting, and for post as well. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. It's nice to
Yeah.
hear about you, how your approach to that. And, you know, I think that there's, and the technology's kind of allowed some really cool things. Like, this is one of the things that Andrew was talking about last night. It's like he was a Steadicam guy. And for a long time, you know, he was the Steadicam guy in The Matrix and a lot of these other movies. And he was like, now, you know, these some of these new gimbals are just, you know, and I'm the movie we discussed last night was 1917. Like, like that first shot, man, of 1917. I just was like watching that again. I literally sat down and I watched that same shot about 20 times just because I was like, I wanted to see if at any point in time someone slipped up, because I've come from acting, and when you have a big set like that, and this is, you know, this is something that Andrew said that was really interesting. He's like, one of the things that with something like that is that when you're shooting and the product is going to be delivered on an iPhone, it's okay. You can have something off in the corner that's, you know, a little bit off. Or, you know, when you're reviewing it on you know, your monitor that's this big. But he says, when that gets up onto like a 60-foot screen, like the tiniest little thing suddenly is like, what is that? You know? There's these things that are really noticed. And so, you know, he's pointed out that, you know, the absolute attention to detail of some of these DOPs and of some of these directors is amazing. It's just absolutely amazing, you know. And so that's, to me, I'm just awestruck by those guys, you know. I aspire to that, but God knows, I don't know if I have that attention to detail, man. But I can hope.
Yeah.
Now, what's like a dream project of yours? If you had Aladdin's lamp, you know, and you could make whatever you want, what type of story would you like to do?
I mean, doing something that has to, I think, just, I really, really enjoy like shows and films that have to do with kids in adult situations where it gets like Stranger Things or it gets like Hunger Games almost as well. I just saw the other day the pitch trailer for the Hunger Games, which if you haven't seen it, it's so cool on how like they're able to still like get the idea of the Hunger Games across by taking out just random clips from a bunch of different movies and putting it together like that. I think being able to do something that's like Passengers, where we have just having kids in a situation that they're having to take on themselves. I think like Lost in Space is another really great example about that. These are just like, these are like non-ideas. Like it's just random like floating things that have come to mind. I have friends from around the world as well that have insane backstories from just their families as well that I like to retell and reconstruct in that way. Also, I think being able to just work with like just top tier like actors as well, like Ben Stiller or something like that as well, and being able to have up there. I think there's a lot of things that I'm not aware yet that I want to then turn into a movie that I have to either see how lucky I am to have that experience that before almost, or haven't just seen that it could be an idea that you could turn into a movie, just because some of the simplest films can turn into one. I'm such an amateur for forgetting which director this was, but a really famous director. One of his first films had been just about what it's like being a stalker in New York, or a guy who follows people around New York, and that's the entire film. I think it might have been in Christopher Nolan's first film. And it's such a simple idea, but you can think about how far that can take you too. And I think one of my favorite like like times where I really started to appreciate like cinema was Rear Window, Back Window, Rear Window.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like such a simple thing. Like this, like F1 photographer had a bad accident, and now he's having to like live vicariously through other people's like lives through his like Rear Window. And so I think when it's just that dumb, that like simple, and you're able to just create like such a little world around this as well. I think Wes Anderson does a great job at that as well. Like he makes so many like mundane things so beautiful. Also, I think I think that makes it really relatable for a larger audience too. If it's not such like a far-fetched idea, or if it's like not something so out there, but something that people can like get behind, that has like either a lighthearted twist to it, like has to with either like a childhood, or it's something that people have experienced before or get the idea of. I think it's a really great starting point to then build into things that are like fully fictional when it comes to doing like westerns or sci-fi.
I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan, and my hands down favorite movie is I love The Life Aquatic. I absolutely love I love his other stuff, but I don't know why. I'm a Bill Murray fan, and one of the things that's just Wes Anderson's really smart with, he takes all these colors, all these really huge casts, but he works in simple themes. Like The Life Aquatic is really a story about a kid trying to find his dad, and a man trying to reconcile himself with his own past, and his own faults, and it's a redemption story. Whatever it might be beyond that, there's a lot of different working parts, but it's essentially a redemption story. And that's one of the things that that I'm doing my master's right now in screenwriting, and our professor was just beating it into us, like, what is the theme? What are you trying to talk about? What is this movie? Not everything has to have a message. You don't necessarily have to try to build something in there, but you do have to have a topic that you are kind of exploring and maybe even deep diving in, So it's fun. Now, what type of topics are in? You said the idea of children and adult situations. Now, can you tell me more about that? Like, those are really interesting. And I remember when I was growing up reading like The Lord of the Flies, which is a similar concept to, what was it? What was that Japanese one? There was a Japanese one that was essentially like a Lord of the Flies. It just turned like 40 or something. No, Battle Royale. Have you ever heard of that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was a similar concept to like these kids put into these, Hunger Games like situation. So, yeah,
I mean, I think Squid Games is kind of like a fun like reverse on that too. I'm on the last episode of it right now. It's like a terribly depressing thing, and they just like turn your heart every like single episode for that. But I think there's a vulnerability, I think, with like emotional vulnerability when it gets to kids, that they don't entirely understand like sometimes social etiquette. So you can like, if you've seen Fear Street, I believe they're all based on books, and everybody kind of talks like they're almost like from a book, almost like they're not like they're not like functioning like psychologically like straight humans when it gets that sort of thing. Like they're all kind of twisted in some way, but they like look like a kid, they sort of talk like a kid, and they behave like one. So it puts you like somewhere in just this like uncanny like emotional valley that I think is super cool for that, to be able to still construct like a kids like behaviors in a bit of a different way. I think having something like in the Hunger Games or in Stranger Things, where you're putting them into a situation that doesn't happen to a kid, I think like like when I was a kid, I was such a Star Wars fan. I was so convinced I had the Force, and I'm like just trying to remember that like little bit of just imagination that came from that, I think is something that you can kind of reconstruct for people if you are able to convince them that like, hey, like this world is real right now. Like, as far as you're concerned, you're gonna sit in this like movie theater for 2 hours. You paid to get in here. You're only gonna leave with a memory. Like this, you just enjoy it. Like here's a bunch of stuff. Here's a bunch of like sounds and you're gonna think that it's all real. I mean, Harry Potter like did that incredibly.
I was thinking about Harry Potter. Yeah,
like, I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan. Like, unfortunately, I haven't. Yeah, there's a lot of other ones I can really get behind. Maybe I'm just like trying to be hipster with just against the hype of it, but I think they're still incredible movies. But yeah. I don't know. I think it's something that maybe just at my age as well, just being able to really appreciate that too. And I hope I can hold on to that as well. But I think it's just the fun of being able to tell people who's probably like a younger to a middle-aged audience, hey, do you remember like thinking about this when you were a kid, or like wanting to be like this sort of thing too? Yeah, I think like E.T. had done a great job of that too, of what everybody hopes like happens to them as a kid, like an alien comes in your room, like. And at the same time too, when I then watched my dad had me watch Alien when I was like 8 years old, and I was terrified of face huggers, and I like that petrified me for so long. And that like the Alien and Predator movies are just some of my favorite. Like when I don't know, when you're looking at like the first light of the day and it's just completely blue hour, you're just like, God, I just want to make an entire movie that like has to do with like this like palette right now. And that's like horror movies for a good part. It's just like dark, moody films, which is great to go. But yeah, that was just a big ramble about nothing. But that was basically my long-winded way of saying that. Yeah.
Well, and there's a really interesting point. Like there was sometimes my daughter's 5, and there's this one and we do talk about the innocence of a kid, and it was really interesting that you talked about that topic, because I watched this show that she watches. It's called Morphle, and essentially it's a kid's cartoon, right? Mm-hmm. Not interesting or anything, but the premise. I in my messed up mind, I keep spinning over this story, because the premise is this character that's kind of like an alien or something that can morph into anything. It can turn into a rocket ship. It can turn into this and turn into that. And I was like, man, if this character was for real, like every single government on this planet would be trying to hunt this thing down and weaponize it. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I'm watching this kid show, and so like there is this innocence where you have to like kind of bridge that gap. And so that's a really interesting thing. And I agree. Like, though Harry Potter, like, they didn't really kind of help the kids. Kind of, you can look online, like Dumbledore was kind of a horrible teacher. He never really helped her. You can do it, Harry. What the hell am I doing, man?
They kind of just like let them on their own like that. I mean, I think like the Padawans or something that came from Star Wars then too, like they kind of set them up for failure as well when they deserved them. But the prequel trilogy of all of them, I think it's a great like story that whoever was like a fanatic of Star Wars just like want to be like Anakin like so badly like that, or like doing like speed racers and stuff like that too. It just sounds like the wildest thing to be able to do. And you could totally get convinced about it when you're a kid. Like this world is real. Like well, and that's the beauty of film, is that it can transport you into this other world. Yeah. And the prequel trilogy, I know people hate on them, but if you start reading up on George Lucas's, and I don't know what it's called, if it's a ring theory or circle theory about how he writes in this certain way, and there is you got to look it up. And so he has this way that he loops everything, and he had that planned for the new trilogy as well, but then they kind of just didn't go down that path. I still don't know. I've got a beef. I'm not one of the fans of the new trilogy, and not because I didn't think that the films were great, but I didn't know how can you have one of the most iconic franchises ever and literally not have a 3-story arc? Like, you give these different directors and like just like kind of do your own thing, I think what they did with Solo and Mandalorian were like incredible. God. They're so dope, and what they're doing with the technology there too is insane. Like But with the new trilogy, they're really beautiful, but they're not like as captivating as like the other ones where like you don't fall in love with the characters or anything like so much
but the
anymore.
Mandalorian,
Mandalorian, it's incredible. Yeah, I think it's
amazing,
fantastic on how they're able to do that much with a TV show.
The documentary that I saw too, it was like a making of documentary about the guy who did the music for that. Amazing. And he just like kind of locked himself into a room, pulled out a bunch of these big old flutes, or they're not flutes, they were like recorders, like the recorders that kids play, except
the soundtrack's iconic in it.
Whew. Yeah, and the tech, that was something too that my friend was talking about yesterday, is like these screens are just, they're giving people so many more options, and it's awesome. So my dream is to have some type of ability to work on something related to like the Star Wars franchise, but especially the Mandalorian series. Like, oh my god, dude!
Absolutely,
dream come true right there, man.
Yeah, and they flipped.
Go ahead, please.
They flipped through a whole bunch of directors throughout their seasons too, so then more likelihood then.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. There's a chance. There's a chance.
Yeah.
And one of the things too is like, one of the things that I'm really excited about that we're seeing with TV, especially because of streaming. Streaming, they need content, and the absolute scale of the world building. You didn't get to see that. A lot of films in the past were one-off. You might get some fun trilogies, but they didn't have that scale of world building, that was built into them. But now, you've got all of these different shows that deep dive into these, really interesting worlds. And like you have been saying, like, you feel transported to this location, dude, I'm a huge Jedi fan. I'm a huge Star Wars fan too. I have multiple Yodas around my room, and we do some lightsaber fights in my house with my daughter. And,
wonderful.
The force is with her. But when you watch The Mandalorian or these other shows, man, you're there. You really are there. And so, what do you think about some of these world buildings? Like, are you a fan of any of these greater, like whether it be The Witcher or The Mandalorian, obviously, but these other series that you might find interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them, like Westworld, for example, like
it's good, yeah.
Like people love like the fun and games that come with just like having to see all the different characters and stuff. And I think like when you walk into the like cantina in Star Wars and you see all the different like people and everything, like you just want a whole movie that's just like showing different like just different types of people that live here. You just want like one big filler episode that just has to do with all that stuff. And I think they know the right dose to add into all that, like with Total Recall, like showing you on how much of the like outer world there actually is, or Edge of Tomorrow. There's like another one that they that's a really badass one.
I love that movie, man. That movie.
And yeah, like I think it is something that then if you have like an incredible like compositing team that can really like make beautiful like landscapes like that, or cityscapes, or then really being able to have great like animators if you're having to have like foreign creatures and stuff like that too. Like that's something, being able to work with VFX in that way. I think if you're able to kind of like nonchalantly like show all these crazy things, but you're packaging in a way like Total Recall, like having like all these different places and things, but nothing's too far out there because you're like under the like understanding that you're watching a movie about the future, so these things could be there and it's not just like taking away from the movie sometimes. I think is an incredible way to just then be able to play through imagination, where in any other like type of job you couldn't be able to do that. And I think that's something that I'm then sort of missing too with just doing like documentary and sort of stuff, is just being able to like play with imagination that way more and more. I think be able to already kind of like replay people, like part of people's lives in that way, is a nice way to practice it, like a certain component of all that. But then that has to do with more of the concepting side of it. But then when you're able to play more with like the visuals and the actual execution of it, which in theory is a bit more the thing that you just need to get the right team together to be able to accomplish, and like concepting is more under the director's job for that. It's something I'm really excited to be able to make happen like that.
Well, man, I look forward to seeing what type of stuff you start creating, brother. That's pretty exciting. Now, if you had any advice for other people, like from that you've learned in your career, what type of advice would you give to people that are coming up like you are, or in the same, coming down this path? I know you're young, but I'm sure you got some wisdom.
I mean, like the past like year and a half or 2 years of just kind of always being on the go, and not you sacrifice like financial stability to be able to do the sort of work we do, and just making the absolute most of every opportunity you have. Like, if you never know where an opportunity is going to take you, and being able to do the absolute most with that. I heard a quote the other day as well that goes into just continuously practicing the craft, and how you do have to like do your own like passion projects, and that could be the one thing that really gets you the ticket to in the right person's in the right door. And so I think saying like practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect, and that you can. I'm saying this verbatim from a Film Riot podcast I just listened to the other day about. But it totally applies, in how you can lazily kick a soccer ball against your garage door, and never get better. But if you try kicking that same soccer ball perfectly in the corner every single time, you're going to be fantastic. And so just every chance you get to either try something new, doing something that is better than what's already out there, absolutely, like taking inspiration from these sort of things. What happens if you put two of these really cool things together? Does it make something better? Does it make something worse? Always just kind of building the confidence to play. Like it's a really playful like industry we're in. Like, we're making pictures and sounds that then provoke an emotion.
Right.
And I think always just being able to have the courage to take that sort of risk, to be able to understand that you're gonna have to sacrifice a bit to get to the place you want to go to, and definitely do that passion project you need to, because we're always one banger away from making it. So I think that's what I'd have to say.
That's awesome. I'm a martial artist, and I there was one of the points that you made there about like practice and perfect practice. Like, I think that when I was coming up, we would drill doing things the right way, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and there's a monotony to doing it. But that's it's like you can try new ways to do it. You can get out and play with it, but at the same time, you have to always be trying to refine your craft, because for like the martial arts, like there was this one funny comic way back in the day, and like it was all these guys training, and like all of a sudden these aliens got off this ship, and the aliens were made of bricks and pieces of wood, and it was like, finally our moment has arrived. It was like so stupid, because they've been training to break pieces of wood and bricks. You know what I mean? So it's like, but my point being, like, we're always, my friend and I, we have a term, like that we love to talk about. If she's an acting manager, and she and I told her this term, and she loved it, and she uses it all the time for her actors now. And sharpening the sword. Like, sometimes you don't know when an opportunity is going to come, but you still have to be prepping. Like, that warrior, they were keeping the sword sharp. You don't want to let things get dull. You want to be active and kind of doing your own thing, which is, again, why I love the creator generation. I love this new, when I was coming up, if you wanted to make a film, I'm the beginning of the DSLR. I remember the first DSLR that I had. I remember when that stuff came out, and it changed the game. The Canon, 5D Mark II, man, was, had video on it. 5D1, no, it was still a photography camera, but the 5D2, you could start running, video, and the video quality was not bad, but then after that, it was just like a cascade of people having the ability to make their own stuff, and it was an absolute game changer. And then you get, all of the softwares just became so much easier to use. My point being, there's no excuse for people not to be making stuff now. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, it's like, you try to do it 20 years ago. You got to go buy all the film, and you better have to know how to splice it. And you got all of it. It was prohibitive, it was expensive, if you want to start getting into making a feature, something that can be projected on the screen. But now, man, you can rent, the Sony A7S III or whatever, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K, boom, you've got something that is worthy of being submitted to festivals, So I love it, man.
The 5D, it reminds me of one of my other really favorite films is Francis Ha. It's one of the most beautiful. It's like probably, I don't even know if you consider it cinephile. Maybe I'm just saying that because it's black and white. But it's like a beautiful piece, like in New York. I love it when there's like any movies to do about New York, just because there's so much like imagination that surrounds it too. But it was all shot on the 5D. I think Adam Driver is in that one as well when he was really early on, and like some very iconic actors are in that one, and they shot on a 5D and ran around New York and Paris with this. And I think the more you have to use minimal tech, the more you need to put emphasis on your actual like subject matter you're shooting for.
Yes.
Because you can definitely you can definitely make up for having like poor video quality, like make the audio a bit nicer, but just really like you can really hone in on like what your actual like scripting is, or what like people in your film are actually doing. And I think being able to practice that constantly, and if it's just like you and your friends just like trying different ways of like cutting stuff, or like if it's just like doing doodles on a piece of paper that look both ways and just doing voiceover to it too. I think like I'm a big sucker for quotes still, and I remember one that I think it was from a Samsung commercial as well too, that
that's awesome.
Goes it's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light. And it's always the stuff like, while you don't have a lot of people looking at you, like that's when you should be messing up and trying again. Like try really hard, but appreciate it now, because then like when you get to the point, and I'm so thankful that I'm not in that the huge audience, that sort of thing now. I can still keep practicing that. But for when you have to put in front of the audience, like you see how much like people get like torn apart when they do like a bad film or a bad album or something too. And being appreciative of the position you're in now, and just to try new things, to fail, to then do it again and then succeed, is like a huge luxury that you'll be looking back on and be thankful for, and wishing that you could have some of that time again too.
That's some solid advice, man. You just dropped a wisdom bomb right there. I appreciate it, man. Well, I want to say thank you for coming on to the podcast today, man. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a joy.